Hold on to your seats, Africa, because Captain Ibrahim Traoré has just unleashed a thunderbolt that's shaking the foundations of Western imperialism. In a jaw-dropping act of defiance, Traoré has slammed the brakes on a Bill Gates-backed project that released genetically modified mosquitoes into Burkina Faso's skies under the guise of fighting malaria. This isn't just a policy decision, it's a seismic middle to the West's neo-colonial playbook, exposing their sinister agenda to use Africa as a laboratory for their dangerous experiments. The Target Malaria Project, funded to the tune of $41 million by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, has been ordered to halt all activities and destroy its so-called flying syringes, sparking a global firestorm and igniting a Pan-African revolution. This is the moment Africa says, enough is enough. As a Pan-Africanist journalist, I'm here to break down how Traoré's audacious move, alongside other fearless leaders like Namibia's President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, is rewriting the narrative and waking a sleeping giant, Africa, while the West scrambles to contain the fallout. On August 22, 2025, Burkina Faso's military government, led by the 37-year-old firebrand Captain Ibrahim Traoré, issued a communiqué that reverberated across the globe like a thunderclap. The Target Malaria Project, a Gates Foundation-funded initiative to release genetically modified mosquitoes to combat malaria, was ordered to cease all operations immediately. The government went further, demanding the destruction of every last modified mosquito and the expulsion of the project's operatives from Burkinabe soil. This wasn't a polite request, it was a declaration of war against neo-colonial interference. A bold assertion of sovereignty that has left the Gates Foundation and its Western allies scrambling to save face. The Target Malaria Project, spearheaded by British biotech firm Oxitec, with $41 million from Bill Gates, was marketed as a revolutionary solution to malaria, a disease that claims over 500,000 African lives annually, mostly children under 5. But Traoré, with his razor-sharp instincts and unwavering commitment to his people, saw through the glossy promises. Health experts and Pan-African activists have long sounded the alarm on these genetically modified mosquitoes, ominously dubbed flying syringes by critics who suspect a sinister hidden agenda. These insects, they warn, could be engineered to deliver vaccines or other substances without public consent, potentially inducing sterility, immune disorders, or other catastrophic effects. Imagine entire communities rendered infertile, men impotent, women barren, all under the guise of saving Africa from malaria. This isn't conspiracy theory, it's a plausible risk backed by scientists who question the ethics of releasing untested organisms into African ecosystems. Traoré's decision to halt this project is a masterstroke of epic proportions. It's not just about protecting Burkina Faso's 22 million citizens from a potentially dangerous experiment. It's about exposing the Gates Foundation's audacity to treat Africa as a laboratory for its high-risk ventures. For too long, Western organizations have used our continent as a testing ground for their try-and-error projects, bypassing the rigorous safety protocols they'd never dare ignore in their own countries. Traoré's stand is a resounding declaration. Africa is not your petri dish, and our people are not your guinea pigs. This move has sent shockwaves through Western capitals, with posts on X buzzing with hashtags like @Traoré'sGates and #AfricaWake, as Africans celebrate a leader who dares to say no. To grasp the full weight of Traoré's actions, we must confront the ugly truth about the West's relationship with Africa, a relationship built on centuries of exploitation, from the slave trade that tore millions from their homes to colonial regimes that plundered our gold, diamonds, and dignity. Today, that exploitation continues under the guise of philanthropy and development aid, but the playbook remains the same. Africa is a laboratory, and Africans are disposable. Dr. Arikana Chihombori Kwao, a fearless Pan-Africanist and former African Union ambassador, recently set the world ablaze with an Al Jazeera interview, exposing how the West uses Africa as a testing ground for unproven drugs and technologies. She recounted chilling examples of experimental medications, rejected or untested in Western markets, being shipped to Africa under the pretext of free aid. The 1996 Pfizer drug trials in Nigeria, where children were used as test subjects for an unapproved antibiotic without proper consent, resulting in deaths and disabilities, is a stark reminder of this pattern. The Tuskegee syphilis experiments in the United States, targeting black communities, further exposed the West's willingness to treat people of African descent as lab rats. The Target Malaria Project fits this mold perfectly. A high-risk technology, untested on Western populations, is rolled out in Burkina Faso with minimal transparency or accountability. For decades, African nations have been conditioned to accept these free gifts without questioning their true cost. Vaccines, agricultural technologies, health programs all come with strings attached, often entrenching dependency or serving corporate interests. The Gates Foundation, with its $50 billion endowment, has positioned itself as Africa's savior, but critics argue it's a wolf in sheep's clothing, pushing agendas that prioritize profit and control over human lives. Their genetically modified mosquito project, which began releases in Burkina Faso in 2019, has been plagued by controversy, with local civil society groups and social media campaigns linked to the government accusing it of ethical violations. Ali Tapsoba, spokesperson for a coalition against the project, put it bluntly, "This technology is highly controversial and poses ethical challenges. We are saying that we should prioritize safe alternatives." Traoré's rejection of this initiative is a direct rebuke to this legacy of exploitation, a refusal to let Burkina Faso be another casualty of Western hubris. Captain Traoré is not a lone warrior in this battle. Just weeks before his move against Target Malaria, Namibia's trailblazing President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, who became the country's first female head of state in March 2025, made global headlines by rejecting a Gates Foundation proposal to conduct clinical trials for a long-term hormonal intrauterine device, IUD, targeting Namibian women, designed to prevent pregnancy for up to 8 years. The IUD was pitched as a reproductive health initiative, but Nandi-Ndaitwah saw through the veneer. In a scathing statement, she condemned the proposal as a profound injustice to the Namibian people and humanity at large, highlighting the risks of using African women as test subjects for unproven reproductive technologies. Though some details remain unconfirmed, her stance has electrified Pan-Africanists, who see her as a beacon of resistance alongside Traoré. Contrast this with Kenya, where President William Ruto has thrown open the doors to similar Western initiatives. Reports indicate that Kenya has greenlit Gates-backed programs, including potential trials for the hormonal IUD, with little public debate or scrutiny. Ruto, often hailed in Western capitals as a reliable partner, has been criticized by Pan-Africanists for his eagerness to embrace these projects without questioning their implications. While Traoré and Nandi-Ndaitwah are dismantling neo-colonial schemes, leaders like Ruto are enabling them, signing agreements that could expose their people to untold risks. This stark contrast underscores a growing divide in African leadership: those who stand for their people versus those who serve as puppets for foreign interests. On X, Kenyans are increasingly vocal, with posts like "Ruto sells us out while Traoré fights for us" gaining traction, reflecting a groundswell of frustration with leaders who prioritize Western approval over African lives. The halt of the Target Malaria Project is not an isolated act, but part of Traoré's broader campaign to dismantle Western influence in Burkina Faso. Since seizing power in a September 2022 coup, the young captain has made it clear he's not here to play nice with the West. In June and July 2025, his government revoked the operating licenses of 21 international NGOs, accusing them of advancing foreign agendas under the guise of humanitarian work. This purge targeted organizations receiving Western funding, including those linked to the Gates Foundation, signaling Traoré's zero-tolerance policy for neo-colonial meddling. His foreign policy is equally uncompromising. In early 2023, Traoré expelled French troops from Burkina Faso, accusing them of perpetuating colonial dominance under the pretext of counter-terrorism. He pivoted toward Russia, forging ties with the Wagner Group to bolster national security and secure partnerships that respect Burkina Faso's sovereignty. In a stunning move, he also led Burkina Faso's withdrawal from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, forming the alliance of Sahel states with Mali and Niger to assert regional autonomy. This alliance, announced in 2024, aims to create a counterweight to Western-dominated regional bodies, prioritizing African-led solutions to security and economic challenges. Most recently, Traoré gave the United Nations a heart attack by expelling its top official in Burkina Faso over a report about children caught up in the country's jihadist conflict. The report, which Traoré's government deemed false and inflammatory, was published without consulting Burkinabe authorities, prompting swift action. This expulsion, reported widely on X, underscores Traoré's refusal to tolerate external narratives that undermine his nation's sovereignty. These actions paint a picture of a leader who is unafraid to challenge global powers, even at great personal risk, and who is redefining what it means to lead an African nation in the 21st century. Traoré's moves lay bare a grim reality. The West's relationship with Africa is rooted in exploitation, a legacy that stretches from the transatlantic slave trade to colonial resource extraction to modern-day corporate greed. Today, this exploitation takes subtler forms: philanthropic initiatives that mask profit motives, aid programs that entrench dependency, and scientific experiments that treat Africans as disposable. The Target Malaria Project, with its untested mosquitoes, is a textbook example. Why is Africa always the first testing ground for such technologies? Why not London, New York, or Paris? The answer is painfully clear. The West sees Africa as a laboratory, its people as expendable. This double standard is infuriating. Western nations demand rigorous safety protocols for their own populations, with multi-year clinical trials and public consultations before new technologies are deployed. Yet in Africa, they roll out untested projects with minimal oversight, cloaking their actions in the guise of charity. The Gates Foundation's mosquito releases, which began in Burkina Faso in 2019 and continued as recently as August 2025, have been criticized by local groups for their lack of transparency. Target Malaria claims it's operating in compliance with Burkina Faso's national legislation since 2012 and remains ready to cooperate. But these assurances ring hollow when communities report adverse ecological effects and fear hidden health impacts. Traoré's defiance exposes this hypocrisy, shining a spotlight on the West's evil deeds and forcing a reckoning with their colonial mindset. This isn't just about mosquitoes, it's about the broader pattern of mistreatment. The West's history in Africa is littered with atrocities: the looting of Congo's rubber and ivory, the theft of South Africa's diamonds, the forced labor in Kenya's colonial plantations. Even after independence, the exploitation continued through structural adjustment programs that crippled African economies and aid packages that enriched Western corporations. The Gates Foundation, with its billions, is just the latest player in this game, using its wealth to push technologies that serve its agenda while dismissing African concerns. Traoré's actions are a wake-up call to every African to question the true cost of free aid and demand accountability from those who claim to help us. Traoré's bold moves are a rallying cry for Africans to reclaim their agency. For too long, African leaders have signed agreements with Western organizations without scrutinizing their implications. From trade deals that favor multinational corporations to health initiatives that prioritize profit over people, these blind endorsements have kept Africa tethered to neo-colonial chains. Leaders like Kenya's William Ruto, who eagerly embrace Western projects, exemplify this complacency, signing deals that could expose their people to risks like sterility or ecological damage. In contrast, Traoré and Nandine Ndaitwah represent a new breed of leaders who dare to say no, who demand respect, and who prioritize their people above foreign interests. This awakening is not just for leaders, but for the African people. Traoré's popularity is soaring across the continent, from Ouagadougou's dusty streets to Nairobi's bustling markets to the diaspora in Europe and America. His speeches, filled with unapologetic truths about Western exploitation, are lighting a fire in the hearts of millions. In a 2022 address, he asked, "Why is Africa poor?" before tearing into the imperialist lies that have painted our continent as a land of despair. "Africa is not poor," he declared. "Our wealth is stolen, and we are told we are nothing." These words, shared widely on X, under hashtags like Traoré Speaks and #AfricaWake, are a mirror, forcing Africans to confront the reality of their exploitation and demand better. Make no mistake, Traoré's courage comes at a steep price. By challenging the likes of Bill Gates, France, and the UN, he's painting a massive target on his back. Reports suggest he has survived at least 19 assassination attempts since taking power in 2022, a chilling reminder of the West's history of eliminating African leaders who threaten its interests. Patrice Lumumba, assassinated in 1961 for his anti-colonial stance. Kwame Nkrumah, overthrown in 1966 for his Pan-Africanist vision. Thomas Sankara, murdered in 1987 for his revolutionary reforms. Muammar Gaddafi, killed in 2011 for defying Western hegemony, or fell victim to Western-backed coups or assassinations. Traoré, often compared to Sankara for his fiery rhetoric and people-first policies, knows the risks but refuses to back down. This danger is why many African leaders hesitate to take a stand. Without a strong, unified African Union (AU) to protect them, they fear retribution from global powers. The AU, formed in 2002 to champion African unity and sovereignty, has largely failed its purpose. Instead of being a bulwark against neo-colonialism, it's often a bystander, paralyzed by bureaucracy and competing interests. Its silence on issues like the Target Malaria Project or the expulsion of UN officials speaks volumes. The AU's inaction leaves leaders like Traoré exposed, forced to rely on their own resolve and the support of their people. In Burkina Faso, Traoré has bolstered his security, with loyalist forces guarding him round the clock. But the threat remains ever present. Imagine an Africa where the AU lives up to its founding vision, a continent that stands as a united front against exploitation, with leaders like Traoré and Nandine Ndaitwah leading the charge. Africa is not poor, it's a treasure trove of wealth, holding 30% of the world's mineral reserves, including 60% of its cobalt, 12% of its oil, and vast deposits of gold, diamonds, and uranium. The continent's 1.4 billion people, with a median age of 19, are a powerhouse of human potential, ready to drive innovation and growth. Yet, for centuries, these riches have been siphoned off by foreign powers, while Africans are fed narratives of poverty and helplessness. If the AU could harness this wealth and rally behind leaders who prioritize their people, Africa could rival any global power. The continent's GDP, currently at $2.7 trillion, could soar if its resources were managed for Africans, not Western corporations. A united Africa could negotiate trade deals on its own terms, reject exploitative aid, and protect its leaders from external threats. Imagine an African common market, leveraging the continent's 54 countries to create a $5 trillion economy by 2030, as projected by some economists. Imagine African militaries, united under a reformed AU, defending the continent from foreign interference. This is the Africa Traoré envisions, an Africa that stands tall, unafraid, and unstoppable. Traoré's actions show what's possible when one leader dares to act. His support base, both in Burkina Faso and across the continent, is a testament to the hunger for change. In Ouagadougou, markets buzz with vendors selling T-shirts emblazoned with Traoré's face and slogans like "Africa for Africans." In Nigeria, students are organizing Traoré talks to discuss his policies. In South Africa, activists are calling for a Traoré-style revolution to reclaim land and resources. On X, his speeches have been viewed millions of times, with comments like, "This is the leader Africa needs," and "Time to wake up," flooding the platform. But this momentum must be sustained. The AU must reform, shedding its inertia to become a true defender of African sovereignty, or it risks becoming irrelevant as leaders like Traoré take matters into their own hands. This is our time. Africa is waking up, and with leaders like Traoré and Nandine Ndaitwah, we're breaking free from the chains of manipulation. The West is scared because Africa is rising, and we will not be silenced. Let's march forward, united, to reclaim our continent's greatness, to build a future where no African is a guinea pig, and to show the world that Africa is not just awake, it's unstoppable.